Hello, this is Franco Cabral broadcasting from the Honest Liar Podcast, a conversation around finding the inner liar within all of us and leveraging the truth to create expansion across all areas of your life. Today's topic is WTF. Seriously? So I was trying to figure out what to name this podcast, and I realized that this is exactly how I would have responded and have responded in the past when I've had a day like I had in the past day, when I'm recording this, for that matter. And it actually made me think of a podcast that I did, number 17, Morning Shit Show, because I responded very differently this time, but it was one of those days. So I picked up my kids. This was later in the day, around 4:30, 5 o'clock. And it was date night with the kids, which I was super excited about. They were pumped about, and my wife was actually out of town, so wanted to make sure that they were feeling the love. They tend to miss us when they go away, and we had this date planned. It happened to be one of these rare days in February when I'm recording this, where it was like 57, 58 degrees in the winter, which was awesome. So we decided to go to the park, and we were doing pizza night. On the way to the park, Daddy did not see the massive crater somehow in the road, probably distracted thinking about something else, trying to transition from work to play date with the kids, and I hit this massive pothole. And all of a sudden, the lights went off in the car, and boom, the kids were like, what happened? And I had a flat. So I didn't freak out. It's not the first time that I've gotten a flat in this car. And however, this car happens to have run flats. So I said, all right, cool. I can keep driving. And I did. I started to think about, my kids are asking me, what happened, Daddy? And I was like, Daddy got a flat tire, but it's okay. We're just thinking it through. I took a moment. I said, Daddy just needs a moment to think. And I checked the time. It was about 5 o'clock. And I decided to call a few tire shops while I was still on my way to the park. No tire shop was going to be able to change their tires, change the tire from now till the time they closed, which was only in about an hour. Even though I was about 10, 15 minutes away, I wasn't going to have any success, so I knew that wasn't a solution after I tried 2 different places. So in my head, I decided, all right, well, what is it that I want out of the rest of tonight? I can go straight home, or I can leverage the fact that I have a run flat tire, and I can stick to the plan. So that's what I decided to do. I said I can't control the fact that I got a flat tire, but I checked it out. Flat didn't look so bad. I have run flat tires. That's the whole purpose of it. So we decided to go to date night, and we had an epic time. I found a way to just be present. I talked about it with the kids, and I realized that something was different for me in this moment. I realized that I didn't allow myself to be completely robbed of date night because I wasn't quite sure how I was going to figure out a plan. But I just let myself be in the space of thinking about it for a little bit. And it was actually really helpful. I decided to talk to my kids about it. They, said, what happened, Daddy? And I explained to them. I told them why we couldn't go to a tire shop. And in talking to them, and we continued to talk about this as we went slowly to a pizza, I figured out, okay, I got a plan. I have, thankfully and gratefully, we have a second car that I have access to, and I just happened to have lent it to a friend of mine the day before. So I called him up and I said, listen, this happened, and I'm going to need some help. Tomorrow morning, I need you to come switch cars with me. I can continue to give you the car if you are willing to go fix the tire on the car that I need fixed because I have to go to work early in the morning. And he said, sure, yeah, no problem. He was helping me out. I was obviously helping him out by lending him a car. And the rest of the night was pretty saved. And I remember feeling last night like, wow, I responded differently to my external conditions that I had no control over. And this was something that came up for me in the Buddhist class that I was just in this past week. We were talking about this internal nature, basically we are peaceful by nature. Your Buddha nature is what Buddhism calls it. But at the core, we are all peaceful, happy, and joyful people, beings. And I remember hearing how, when I heard this, I was like, that sounds nice. And, that's very optimistic thinking. But I've been thinking about this over the last few days a lot more. And I realized that my default is peace before all of the stories that I've learned and the habits that I've learned over time. And here it was, an opportunity that I could have gone to my default of, frustration and stories and, oh my God, what am I going to do? And, being stressed out and creating chaos. But I have habits and routines that I've been creating between meditation and my daily spark that gave me a little bit of space before just reacting. And I chose how I wanted to accept the conditions of what happened. So I was psyched about it. And I get a call from my friend, 9 o'clock at night, with some bad news. Tells me, hey, I don't know what to tell you, but I just got pulled over by the cops, and there's, seems to be an issue with a suspended registration on your car. They're going to impound the car. And instantly I was like, oh my God, what do you mean? And I started to panic. But I caught myself within a few minutes, and I was like, all right, well, what's the point of panicking? Let's just get the details. So fast forward, basically, the car was impounded. There was nothing I can do to control it. I was talking to my business partner right after because I had a whole set of appointments for the next day. I was supposed to work with one of my team members, and I was stressed out. I was like, how am I going to get this done? And then I started to, again, reflect, and I said, all right, I need a little space. Let me go to this inner wisdom that they're talking about in Buddhism and just create some space to think, and allow myself to feel whatever I'm feeling, but to go deeper within me and to realize what is it that I can control and what can I not control. So I couldn't control that the car was impounded. It was 10 o'clock at night. I couldn't control the fact that I didn't have another car to get where I needed to in the morning. So I said, all right, well, let me just go to sleep. I can control getting a good night of sleep, waking up early, and being in power for the day and playing the daily game so that I can be set mentally for whatever is coming my way on the next day. I knew that it was probably going to be a challenging mental day, so I wanted to start the day in power, which is what I did. So I went, obviously, as I mentioned prior, my wife's not around. So I'm also doing pickup and drop off. So I'm with my kids in the morning, and I have no way to drop them off for school and the sitter. So I decided to take them with me to the tire shop. I'm like, worst case scenario, maybe an hour. We'll get it done, in and out. Of course, when I get there, they say there's none of my tires in stock, and the warehouse is the only place that has it. There's no close tire shops that we're going to have the tire, and it's going to be probably like 3-4 hours. So I had that moment of panic for a second, and then I'm like, all right, well, can I control this? And I spoke to the attendant. I said, hey, is there anything we can do? Can I pay to expedite it? This is really important to me. And basically, he said, no, there's nothing we can do. So I said, okay. And again, I took a moment to go into this deeper inner place of wisdom. And I said, all right, well, what do I want out of this situation from the things that I can control? So I thought about it. I said, all right, kids, we're going on an adventure hike. And they were like, yay, sounds awesome. Where are we going? What are we doing? And I said, we're going to find a place to eat breakfast. And we walked for about a half a mile. And we had an epic walk. The kids were playing. They were stopping. I was just letting them be. And I just allowed myself to be because what else was I going to do? I couldn't control the situation. And the walk was peaceful. And I realized, I think I'm onto something. Because anything that was coming at me throughout the course of the day, I was just choosing to respond from what my inner wisdom was saying to me. And now this is something that has taken practice and is something I'm still very much practicing, but I'm learning at a much deeper level the importance of the daily game that I play, which I've talked to you guys about. I just shared recently in one of the last podcasts. But it's about getting myself in power and creating distance from the external conditions that I cannot control and finding that clarity within me to figure out what it is that I want. So I finally ended up getting the kids to school. It actually ended up working out. After breakfast, the tire shop got done with my car faster than I thought it would. And I felt pretty fired up about that. I was like, all right, my first win. And I dropped the kids off. I went to the DMV, which, if you've ever been to DMV, it's an awesome place to practice patience. And I was thinking about it as I was sitting there, going on almost 2.5 hours. I kept checking myself because I had moments where I start to slide into frustration. I'm like, well, what am I frustrated about? I can't control it. Makes no difference. And this lady next to me was absolutely triggered by every single time that the ding went off at the DMV. If you've been there recently, you know what I mean. It goes ding. You, 927, you are next at counter 17. And every single time the next number hit and it wasn't hers, she was like, oh, this is ridiculous. And she was so frustrated, every single one. And then I realized, okay, well, here's another opportunity. I can choose to show up the way that she's showing up, or I can choose to decide what that trigger of that ding means to me. Because she had already decided that every time it dings and it's not her name, or her number, she was going to be triggered and more frustrated about it. That's the story that she created, and that's what the result she was getting. So I decided that every time I heard that ding, I was going to use that as an opportunity to bring myself back to center, to gratitude. And as I heard the next ding, she got frustrated, and I was like, wow, I'm thankful that we didn't get into a car accident and it was just a flat tire. And then the next ding, she gets frustrated, and I say, wow, I'm grateful that I have 2 cars and some people don't even have 1 car. And then I just kept doing this. I'm like, I'm grateful that, my kids are healthy and they're able to go to a great school. And I'm grateful that I have a job that allows me the flexibility where I've created a career and I'm an owner and I have the flexibility to do what I need to do on days like today. And I realized that with every ding, I was starting to smile. My energy was amazing. And this lady kept getting worse and worse and worse. Now, this energy started to really carry some momentum in all the conversation I was having. I went to the DMV window, and the first thing I said to this lady was, wow, thank you for doing your job. Like, you do not have an easy job. You have all these disgruntled people sitting here for hours, and you have to deal with them when they're at their highest level of frustration. I just want to say thank you for doing your job. It's not an easy one. And she was like surprised. She was like, well, thank you. And I threw her off definitely because I'm sure I'm probably the only person that thanked her for doing her job that day. But it opened up a totally different conversation where she was way more helpful than I'm sure she probably was with the last person and the person afterwards. And she guided me in the right direction. Now, I won't continue to go on with this story because this was a super powerful day that could have been an absolute catastrophe for me. But one of the reasons it was most powerful was I played the daily game that I've been playing, and it's given me peace and space to respond the way that I want to. And I did a spark, which is my daily revelation practice that I've talked to you guys about. And my lesson from that spark was clarity of mind in my natural state of peace is the most powerful weapon against any external condition. Now, the way this was showing up for me and why this was such a meaningful lesson that I wanted to share with you guys listening is the external conditions I can't control. But when I go deeper within myself and I find the inner wisdom that lies deeper in my heart, then I get to choose how I want to respond from a place of peace that lives within inside me. Now, that might not make sense because the first time I heard it, I was like, bullshit, I'm a peaceful by nature. I'm happy by nature. Because my whole life, the stories, for a lot of my life, I wouldn't say my whole life because as a kid, I actually had it figured out. And that's something that I'll end with. But I always was looking for what next? What do I need to do? And I put attachment on other things, external things, conditions that would make me happy. So recognizing that I have this unlimited, boundless potential of peace and happiness within me seemed pretty far-fetched when I heard it the first time at Buddhist class. But I've been putting this into practice, and I've been testing this model. And what I realized is that my kids are peaceful by nature, especially as they're born. They know joy. They know how to be centered. They're way wiser than I actually realize, and I've been learning this as I've seen them develop and also at the same time working my own personal development. But my kids are peaceful by nature, and it's not until the stories of life or the conditions of life or the habits they see around them of other people that they start to create distortions or delusions, as they call them in Buddhism. But a delusion exists in your mind. We create these distortions. We create these stories. And whenever we go deeper within ourselves, we find this inner wisdom that I'm talking about, that I'm learning about, this clarity of mind. So I would have you envision that your mind starts from a clear state. And then as we grow, we throw dirt and sediment and rocks. And every once in a while, we have a day like I had yesterday. And my whole world gets shooken up. And now all this dirt is flying around. And without creating space, all of the dirt and the rocks continue to circulate and make it really difficult for me to see what I truly want. But without creating some space, I don't get the opportunity to let it clear. So creating space can look like meditation. Creating space could look like just talking it out versus just reacting and responding. So I did this today. I meditated, I did my spark, and I came to this concept of I am peaceful by nature. And I choose how I'm going to respond to each of the external conditions, because at the end of the day, I am the only one that can create chaos. The tickets cannot, the impound cannot, the DMV cannot. I create chaos based on what I perceive from my external conditions. And that's the lesson that I want you to take from this. Now, how do you implement this or apply this? Fairly simple, is create a little bit of space and just reflect back. Take 5 minutes to meditate. And in that meditation, I want you to think about, in the last 24 hours, what was something that happened to you, or you feel like it happened to you, where you reacted and maybe you didn't quite respond the way you wanted to. That could be something as simple as my son, who's 2.5 years old, sometimes or not sometimes, all the time, I'm talking on the phone, he loves to respond and talk over me. And sometimes I snap. I'm like, I'm on the phone, Adrian. And I'm like, man, you know what? He really didn't deserve that. He was just trying to get my attention. So something like that. I want you to reflect, and I want you to think about one thing that you did in the last 24 hours during this 5 minutes of meditation. And I want you to journal just this one thing, how you responded, why you think you responded in that way, and did that response actually serve you? And then the last thing is, what could you have done different? So that's the assignment for today. And as always, thank you for tuning in to the Honest Liar podcast, a conversation around finding the inner liar within all of us and leveraging the truth to create expansion across all areas of your life. If you have found value in the podcast, please share this with somebody else you think will find value. And also, please rate and review the show. I know I say it on every podcast, but it really makes a difference with spreading light, which is my mission. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful